We are gonna start with, yeah, sure. When you open the Adobe Illustrator, the first thing you do is click on the nice button saying New File. Let's do it now. Okay, so first of all, Adobe Illustrator has a few of the templates preset that you can just like pick from. Let's say print, and there's like letter size, so let's click on the letter size and you're good to go by. However, usually when you're a graphic designer, you need some kind of specifications to be set before, so I always do it by hand because it's just how I work. So there are two use cases that can happen. One of them is that you are working on a digital file, and one of them is that you're working on a file that is going to be printed. So we are going to start with the print. Each time you open any new file, let's always name them, like just name them. This is going to be the print file, because it's much easier to search for them afterwards. I know what I'm talking about. Okay, and when we are working for print, I always said the unit to be like a real world unit. So in case of Europe, where I'm based, it's millimeters. So that I know that when something is gonna be, let's say, 50 millimeters, it's gonna be more or less this big on the printed thingy. So if you're using inches in your country, go for it and use inches. I always go for millimeters, and usually, like, it depends, but you can either search for the size of the print that you're gonna be doing. Like when you're doing something this big, you just like need the measures. If you're going for something small, like, I don't know, business cards, you can basically imagine or like either search on Google like how big they're supposed to be, or pick something that is of your wished size and just measure it by yourself. Or pick from the predefined templates. Nobody's gonna be judging you. However, I always go by myself because I've been working with these numbers for ages. And also back in the days when I started to actually use Adobe Illustrator, there were no templates to pick from. They also have some free templates. If you're interested, you can see them in here. However, where were we? Of course, so millimeters. I'm gonna go for A4 size, which is like a normal paper size. And then I'm gonna be choosing portrait orientation because I want to do, let's say, a set of 3 prints. So portrait it is. You can also go for landscape, but let's go for the portrait. And now with the number of artboards, you can also set like how much you like. As I mentioned, I'm gonna be working on 3 prints, so let's set number 3 in here. And then we are going to move to bleed. Now, what is bleed? Basically, it's like an overflow of your graphics, which is used then for trimming. Like when you cut and you cut a little bit off, nothing happens because you have the overflow of the graphic. I'm gonna show you very soon in the file. So considering I'm gonna be doing the prints, I want to bleed be 3 millimeters. It's usually the safe bet to go. From time to time, when you know the printer where you're gonna be sending your prints, they have it predefined, so it's fine to ask if they have something. If not, I always go for 3 millimeters. Then in the advanced options in here, we are going for CMYK, because it's a printed document, and we always go for CMYK in the print. Basically, the reason is that the colors layer differently in the print as they do in the digital file. However, I will show you the explanation, the shortcut somewhere in here. And otherwise we are good. And then we are going for raster effects, and we go for high setting. It's 300 points per inch, which is basically like how many points per inch is gonna be there. 300 is the basic limit, like a minimum limit in printing, because the printers print at this resolution. And then in the preview mode, we can go for default, and then we can see the overprint later. It's basically for viewing your final document, how it's gonna look when it's gonna be actually printed. But I always go for default. And then we can go to more settings, And in here you can set, for example, in how many columns your artboards are gonna be showing. So if you have 3 and you want them to be side by side, you select 3 columns and you're good to go. But you can have 30 or 15, then you can want some other way of arrangement. And here you can also set the spacing, which I'm gonna set for 30 millimeters, let's say. I usually like to keep more space in between the artboards because my graphics, for whatever the reason, usually go like really wide everywhere. So I like to keep them apart from each other. And that's basically everything in here. Now we can go and click on Create Document. Here you can see the bleed. It's this red line around your paper. And what basically happens is then, let me show you. I'm gonna have some kind of graphics in this pretty color. Okay, and now when the document is going for print and they're gonna cut it, they are gonna cut from here to here. Let me make it some color so you can actually see it good. And in case you wouldn't have this 3 millimeters in here as the overflow, what can happen is that you can, give me a second, they can cut in a wrong way or like a tiny bit off, and then you would have this ugly white stripe as your graphics. We don't want it. Always keep the overflow and the bleed when you want to do something for print. And as we were setting the mode, as I mentioned before, let's move it. Okay, so now you can see how it looks like in here. And if you have troubles imagining the final picture, how it's gonna look, you go to View. And in here you're going for Trim View, which is gonna show you how the artboard is gonna look after it's cut. Alrighty, so we are good with the print file, and now let's go for the digital one. So Command N, if you wanna know, is the shortcut for new document, and we are gonna name this digital file. And again, as I mentioned before, you can select from like tons of stuff. Again, I'm usually sitting in by myself because I just know the numbers. And in the digital, I always work with pixels. Now, I will set it as full HD because that's the digital version. I usually work on like presentations, slides, or, you know, something in this format. However, you can also work on your Instagram's post or something, so then always check the numbers because Instagram is kind of changing the post sizing pretty often, and there's also different ratios that like 4:3 or 1:1 and such. So we have it set. I want 3 outboards as well because let's say I'm gonna be doing a presentation. In the digital file we don't need the bleed, so I'm gonna keep it at 0, and then we are gonna use RGB color mode because in the print the colors layer differently. Now talking about the resolution, which is the point per inch. In digital files, 72 is kind of enough for the screen, but sometimes I go for 150 because I want to print. I want it to be like higher quality, or I don't know, whatever. However, if you go for screen, 72 should be good enough. And again, in the preview mode, you can go for the pixel one, but I just go for default and it looks a little bit like the same. And if you go to more settings in here, again, you can see I want to set the spacing in between the artboards to be 150 pixels. So that's basically it, and we go for create document, and you can see we have now 3 artboards that we can work on. That's basically everything for this topic. Thanks, and see you in the next video. Bye!